Happy Monday, and welcome back to this week's Wicked Wisdoms. Now, this week's we're stepping out of the spotlight and into the shadows, because the most dangerous person in Wicked isn't Elphaba. It's not even the wizard. It's Madame Morrible. Now, she doesn't have the most visible power. She doesn't have the ability to raise armies or bring lava, but she doesn't need to. She has something much more effective. She controls the narrative. She defines the terms and she sets the tone. She decides who belongs and who doesn't, who's good and who's wicked. Now, in many ways, she represents one of the most powerful forces in leadership today, which is respectability politics. So let's talk about what that is. Now, respectability politics is this unspoken system that says you can be accepted here, but only if you act right. Only if you dress right, only if you speak right, you emote right, if you agree at the right moments and you challenge in the right tone. Now, this isn't in the handbooks, it's not in the job description, but everyone feels it, especially if you're part of the marginalized group. Because the truth is, if you're not white, straight, neurotypical, able-bodied, cisgender, or otherwise in alignment with dominant culture, you've probably had to learn how to play the game. And that game is built by people like Madame Morrible. So let's go back to Wicked. Now, Morrible represents herself as a mentor, a champion for talent, someone who sees potential, but that support is conditional. And when Elphaba shows potential, Morrible elevates her as long as she stays useful, as long as she plays the part. But when Elphaba questions authority, when she refuses to fall in line, there's a line that Madame Morrible says that sums it up. Elphaba, you are talking to the wizard. You see, Elphaba wasn't falling in line. She wasn't stepping into place. And Morrible, not only does she drop her like a hot coal, she immediately turns society against her. She doesn't just stop supporting her, she rewrites the narrative to make Elphaba the villain. Now, this isn't magic, it's a strategy. And in today's workplace, this shows up as the Black woman who's told she's intimidating for speaking with confidence. The disabled employee who's praised for being inspiring until they ask for real accommodations. The queer team member who's celebrated at pride events, but quietly excluded from client-facing work. The immigrant whose direct communication style is labeled as unprofessional. The Muslim employee who's coached to tone down the faith expression to make others more comfortable. In each case, it's not the skill that's the issue, it's the story that's being told about the person. A story shaped by invisible expectations about how professionalism is supported to look, sound, and feel. That is respectability politics. And Madame Morrible is fluent in it. But here's the trap. Respectability politics sounds like it's about decorum, but it really does is protect the status quo, the way things have always been. And the thing about that saying, the way things have always been, is it's missing a piece. The way things have always been when everyone knew their place. It tells people you can stay here, but not as you, because it rewards assimilation over authenticity. And if the individual doesn't conform, they're called difficult, disruptive, too much. It's not about whether someone is competent. It's about whether their difference makes others, primarily in the majority, uncomfortable. And if you're in leadership and not aware of this dynamic, you might find yourself unconsciously promoting the Galindas and silencing the Elphabas. And here's where Madame Morrible becomes dangerous, because she doesn't attack, she doesn't shout, she simply repositions. She takes up the role of respected elder, beloved professor, or seasoned executive. And then she subtly turns the tide against anyone who challenges the story that she's telling or selling. Now, that is social control wrapped in good intentions. And it works, because when exclusion sounds polite, it's harder to fight. So what do we do with this? If you are in a position of influence, whether you're leading a team or just shaping your organization's culture, you have a responsibility, not to be the loudest voice in the room, but to make sure that your systems aren't quietly punishing people for being themselves. Ask yourself, are your expectations about professionalism rooted in equity or comfort? Are you confusing being easy to work with for being agreeable? Are you quietly rewarding conformity and calling it leadership? Because here's the cost. When we let Madame Morrible write the rules, you don't just lose great talent. We lose trust, we lose truth, and we lose the future that we say we're building. So let's end with this. Elphaba was never the villain, but when enough people repeat the wrong story, loud enough, long enough, it becomes history. Morrible didn't need magic to exile her. She just needed the right words spoken from the right podium with the right tone. So if you have a podium, use it. Use it to tell better stories, more honest stories, stories where people don't have to earn their dignity through performance. Use your stories for good and not wicked. So that's it for today's Wicked Wisdoms. Next week, we're talking about masking and how refusing to perform normal might just be the most radical act of leadership that there is. But until then, remember, systems don't have to scream to cause harm. Sometimes they just smile and call it professionalism. Until then, don't forget, you've got this. I'll see you next week.